Hi guys, I hope you had a great weekend. Full disclosure before I get started, I sound a little bit like a frog here. I have a bit of a cold, sore throat. I'm fine. It is not corona. I will live. But I may be pausing every once in a while here because this is the most I'll talk all week to sip some water or tea here. So just bear with me there, and I apologize in advance. All right, guys, so we're going to get started with really quickly going over. We're going into, looking at my handy dandy calendar here, this is going to be week 5 of online instruction, which is crazy. I feel like it's going by slowly and fast at the same time. So as we go into week 5, my hope is that you guys see this week as a little bit of a breather, and that you will have kind of one less thing to do this week than you normally have. So this week I'm only asking you guys to focus on 2 things. The first thing I'm going to ask you guys to work on is to basically just finish your no red ink assignment. This no red ink assignment was called verb tenses, and it opened up last Monday, the 20th. So you have the rest of this week to either finish that or start it and finish it, because I know some of you have already completed it and some of you have even actually finished it, which is awesome. Verb tenses was something that I thought would be important to do at this time of year because it's right after reading your essays. And the essays as a whole, well, when they're done, I'm done grading them. I would say the average grade was right around kind of a low to mid B. So as a whole, they were much better than your last ones you guys did. And if you have any specific questions for me, I ask you to check turnitin.com, because I recorded all of my feedback and tried to make it really specific to each of you in your essays in turnitin.com itself. I can go back within turnitin.com and see who's actually opened up their essays and viewed their feedback, and very few of you have done that. So if you are happy with your grade, that's awesome, but either way, I just encourage you to go back into your essay and look at that feedback, okay? So turnitin.com is just a sidebar. Sorry, I got a little distracted there. But as a whole, your first assignment of this week is that no red ink assignment, the verb tenses. That is due by May 3rd, this coming Sunday, by midnight, or 11:59 p.m. technically. So I just ask that you finish that up going into the second week that it's been open and get that all done, okay? The last thing that you guys are going to be doing this week is really just focusing on finishing the novel Night. Sorry, taking a sip of my tea here. And as you finish the novel Night, you should have left off at chapter 5 last week, and you're going to pick up reading chapter 6. Remember I told you that the chapters, obviously you guys have seen by now, and most books are not numbered. And that I just say until the end, because it's like it ends at chapter 9 or 10, but then there's a couple pages right after. You guys are just going to read through till the very end. So that's why I just phrase it that way, 6 to the very end of the book. And once you are done the book, tomorrow morning, Monday morning, that's today, sorry, today's Sunday, so I'm taking this Sunday. Tomorrow morning, Monday, I'm going to post a link to a quiz. And this will be your final quiz on the novel Night. And this quiz will look almost identical to the ones that you guys have already been taking and have been doing much better on this current week on quiz 2. The quiz scores for quiz 2 have been great. So quiz 3 is posted now, or will be posted Monday morning. And you guys are going to go in and complete that quiz. That quiz is going to look identical to the last ones in that it'll be 10 questions total, 40 points, roughly 5 multiple choice, roughly 5 short answers, Google form, the same exact setup where you input your email, all that jazz, and I push the score back to you via that email. So those quizzes, remember guys, once you go in, once you open the link, you are in, you have to finish then, okay? You cannot just close and then reopen it, because that is what kind of keeps the resemblance of a quiz intact there. There is no time limit, so take your time. But really, guys, those are the only two things I'm asking for you to do this week. So hopefully you find this to be, apart from the physical reading part, a fairly light week, especially if you're one of those individuals that has really paced yourself with no red ink. Hi, Lena. Lena's coming to say hi. Usually she's outside while I do these videos, guys, but it's raining, so she's inside. So go see Daddy, baby. It's okay. Let's go outside. Thank you. Sorry. So that's all for this week. Hopefully you guys find this to be kind of a light week for you, especially like I was saying, if you have already finished your no red ink or have started it, then you're looking in really good shape. And I know many of you have probably already even finished your reading since the book is so short. So overall, just no red ink and the last quiz here as you finish the novel Night. Before I switch gears and talk about night quiz number 2, the last thing I was going to talk to you guys about is just kind of a heads up. So far, you guys have probably seen that these last 3 weeks, and really since we've started this novel Night, have been kind of predictable, and that they've been surrounding this novel. But as we conclude this novel, I got to be really honest with you guys. Most of the stuff that I would do in the month of May would be fairly light, especially because, normally I talk to you guys about this in class. Normally in the month of May, we have tests galore and you guys are always gone and this and that. So, I usually do, we watch Castaway, a movie here or there. We do a bunch of just group work type assignments, and I try to make the month of May as a whole really just lighthearted and kind of fun. Dare I even say fun? So I just want to be honest with you and kind of frank when I say that I've really had to kind of come back to the drawing board, because I'm trying to keep things light still for us this last month. And just a really quick preview is that next week we will do some kind of, and to be very honest with you, I'm still working on it. But next week we will do some kind of just conclusive assignment with Night. This is your last quiz you're taking, but I would like still to do kind of one wrap-up assignment with the novel Night, and then one more assignment with just that topic of selfishness. There's an article I really enjoy in our textbook that I'm going to share with you guys. And then from there, I'm contemplating doing just kind of a quick at-home research project that would be kind of interesting and fun. And then the last couple weeks, the last 2 or 3 weeks, we would finish with just some kind of random stuff. I'm going to ask you guys to do a class survey. I try to do one fun creative writing assignment. So for the most part, guys, we're kind of in that downward spiral here. We will have one more no red ink assignment, but I'm just being really frank with you guys in that I'm trying to keep this light. I'm trying to keep this somewhat entertaining, because we would normally hopefully be having much more fun doing group work stuff and, movies in school during the month of May. So this week, this quiz grade is one of our last kind of larger grades. So just keep that in mind. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go over with you guys night quiz number 2. So like I said, funny story. It is Sunday right now at 4:30 p.m. And you guys know I have about 100 plus students, right? Only 45 of you have taken the quiz. So I just think that's hysterical, because you guys are really working these Sunday nights. So I will be very busy Monday morning here grading all these quizzes. So just be gracious with me, as it's going to take me a while to go through 60 plus quizzes tomorrow morning, Monday morning. So anyways, what I have graded so far have been very good, and I've had a lot of 100s, but I am still going to go over this with you just so anything is clear. All right, so question number 1, says, how could Eliezer have bribed the assistant to arrange for him to go with his father to a quote-unquote good unit? Remember, he didn't actually end up doing this, but what he could have done was B. He could have given him his shoes. Shoes were considered an extremely valuable item, and the fact that Ellie got away with them, even just off the original cattle cart inn when they were collecting valuables, is unreal. And many of you might even recall when if you watched last year in middle school, I'm pretty sure they watched it at Central, the interview with Elie Wiesel and Oprah, that in that interview when they're physically at Auschwitz, they show you one of the things in like the museum section is a pile of shoes that's just like this totally, it just kind of is this gut-wrenching visual, because it is a bunch of shoes of people that were turned in prior to basically just being either put to death or being forced into the camps. So the fact that Ellie was able to hold on to his shoes was a huge deal, and they were extremely valuable. So he could have done that, and that would have worked. He thankfully did not have to. Number 2, who beat Ellie in front of the French girl? And that was D. Iddick. I think 99% of you have gotten that one so far. Kind of just your basic reading comprehension question there. Number 3, this was a short answer. It says, why was the French girl afraid to speak to Ellie? So the French girl was not actually French, and that was the big key there that I was looking for. She was actually Jewish, and because of that, she spoke German. So a while back, prior to kind of this peak of World War II and the Holocaust happening, she had managed to get forged papers claiming she was Aryan or French. And so she passed off as an Aryan worker and was able to avoid a concentration camp, and instead just got sent to kind of a working camp because she happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. So because her papers worked and they have no reason to believe that she's Jewish, she was able to get away with a pretty reasonable punishment there. And she was really taking a gamble speaking to Ellie in German, because if she would have been caught, I think that they would have been so mad that she had basically pulled one over on them that she could have been killed instantly, easily. I don't even know at that point that they would have put her into a camp, because they just would have been so mad that she was basically fooling them all along. All right, number 4 and 5, most of you got. Number 4 said, excuse me, what did the sirens signify? And that was C, an Allied attack. So an Allied attack was when basically they were being bombed. Okay, so the sirens would wail then. Number 5 said, what phrase did many repeat before their deaths? And it was A, long live liberty. And again, I think 99% of you got that one. Number 6, this was a tricky one, guys. What does Wiesel mean when he says the prisoner stood naked? Quote, this must show how one stands at the last judgment. So I even gave you a hint on this one and told you guys to think about the theme of religion and just the presence of religion in this novel. Sometimes, guys, in school, you're going to be asked to read books and read novels that surround themes and topics that you know nothing about. This happened to me a ton throughout school, and especially when I got into more of those AP-styled courses where you really had to critical think your way through some complex pieces of literature. So I know that this was not an easy question for some of you that maybe did not have that, own personal knowledge on this subject. But sometimes we're just forced to think about those themes that are present within the book. And the fact of the matter is, he was making a religious statement here and comparing it to something that was very biblical or in their holy book as well. So the fact is that he was comparing it to the Last Judgment. And what the Last Judgment is, that, those of practicing faith, when they die, know that they will stand in front of God and he will judge you based on your life's works, based on your life's decisions. And at that physical point in time, not only are you A, very vulnerable, but B, you can't do anything. So it's vulnerable because you're sitting there waiting for your fate, you're waiting for your judgment, but at the exact same time, you're also just nauseous because at this point, you can't do anything else to change it. It is too late. You just have to stick with whatever decision is about to be given to you. And that's exactly how they're comparing standing there naked in front of these officers and just that vulnerable state, waiting to see if they are good enough to make it to the next round, if they're in shape enough. So not only is he comparing, the vulnerability factor of it all, but he's also comparing the fact that at that moment, could Ellie have like dropped down and given him 50 push-ups and come back up looking buff and been like, okay, now I'm good? No, I mean, not only do I not think he had the strength to pull off 50 push-ups, but clearly that was not going to alter his physical appearance in that moment. So there was nothing more that could be done. So there's many ways in which he was just comparing that to that final decision that people of faith believe, heaven or hell at the end. Okay. Number 7, what sorts of presents and inheritance gifts did Wiesel's father give him? Yes, he did give him rubber. Yes, he did give him some bread. But ultimately, his inheritance gifts were the knife and the spoon. Okay, a knife and a spoon. Number 8, how did Ellie end up in the hospital? This was B. His foot, swollen and infected, required an operation. Guys, this is always kind of a gross thing to read about. And I know many people, when they read it, get really confused. They're like, swollen and infected. What does that mean? So what Ellie basically had on his foot, and he later talks about this in more detail in other interviews, is an abscess. So if you don't know what that is, it's basically like a cyst and kind of just this, he had a, just kind of like a swollen, infected abscess that needed to be cut open and drained. So it's really kind of gross. So like if any of you have ever been into those like gory skin shows like Dr. Pimple Popper or whatever else is on TLC these days, it kind of would have been something like that, but on his foot. And it was basically just from the filthy environment. Yes, he had shoes, but they were obviously just in terrible shape. Think about the blisters that you guys could get just wearing awful shoes to begin with. Or think about the fact that if you guys have ever gone camping or ever gone to like some kind of communal shower, mom might tell you to wear shower shoes so you don't pick up some kind of fungus. It was probably something disgusting along those lines that got infected from either his shoes or just the poor living environment. And it was just gross. And he needed to have it drained. It needed to heal. It was basically an open wound that he had to have heal completely. So then number 9, what decisions did Ellie face when he was in the hospital? So he actually faced several. The first decision, and some of you, I wasn't specific in this question, so if you gave me either or, that was fine. Some of you just talked about his decision to have the operation in the first place, that people were afraid he was going to lose his foot entirely. So that was one decision, to have that operation in the first place. Excuse me. The second decision he had to make was they had gotten word that a front was drawing near to the camp. So the camp was a bit frantic. And he had gotten word that depending on the timing, depending on even just the state of the current workers, like the current Nazi workers, that sometimes those that stay back in the hospital, those that are in that infirmary unit, when they evacuate the camp, that they would just blow it up or kill everyone in there so that there is no chance for survivors. But there was also the very slim chance that they had to evacuate so quickly because the front was drawing so near that they didn't have time. And so because of that, there was that very slight chance that if Ellie had stayed back in the hospital, not only would he have lived and survived still, but he would have been rescued, like completely set free. So it was literally a life or death gamble either way, that he knew that he could ultimately risk either being killed the next day or being rescued the next day. And ultimately that fate, whether he wanted to risk that or not, came into play, and that was the major decision he had to make there. So he decided to leave and evacuate Buna with his father. And then this is always a question I would ask in class as we review this, guys, because this is like such a gut-wrenching detail. You should have noticed that, he's kind of skipped a paragraph after this and went on to say something about, a few years later. And oh my gosh, the heartbreaking truth. What happened to him, or what did he end up finding out later? He ends up finding out that had he had stayed, he would have been rescued the very next day, that they did not have time to kill anyone in the infirmary, and that he literally not only would have lived, but if he could have convinced his father to stay back, maybe his father would have been better off. And so it's just a gut-wrenching story to find out that he basically made the wrong decision. And so that's awful. Last but not least, guys, who was leading the front that had drawn near? And there was a lot of kind of missteps with this question. The answer was D, the Russians. So of course I don't have a map at home. I mean, I thought I used to have a globe, but I don't. So normally I would show you this in class just as like a little visual. But if you look at a map of Europe and just the central location where all of these concentration camps were in Germany and Poland and in that surrounding kind of Central Europe zone, obviously, excuse me, oh, sorry, we, the Americans, and North America are east of them when you're looking at a map. And so we were trying to obviously make our way overseas, make our own way towards Central Europe to stop them. But all that they kept doing, and if you look at a map and the progressional map of concentration camps, all that they kept doing was that as Americans kept creeping closer, they just kept moving their concentration camps further away. And so what really ended up helping us was when Russia decided to join in, and by no means is this a history lesson. Hopefully you're still kind of studying World War II in history, but look this up. Don't fact check me, please. But when Russia decided to join in, they obviously are on the other side. And so this was how we were able to kind of stop them, because the Russians were closing in as they were going this way. So then they had to kind of go back this way as the Americans were closing in the other way. So it was kind of like this sandwiching technique. So that just gives you maybe a very, very rough visual of how the Russians were making their ground on the Germans and the Nazi forces in the camps. So that's it, guys. That's 1 through 10. If you have any questions for me on maybe why I took off points, reach out. If you have any questions for me on the end of the book, if you're confused about anything that, you know, the way it's worded, if you're confused about anything when working with verb tenses this week, let me know. But like I said, I really hope, especially if you've been kind of one of those overachievers that has either started No Red Ink or has already started reading ahead, I really hope that this week is kind of a nice week off for you guys where you can kind of just take a breather and focus on those two things, finishing the book, No Red Ink, and then call it a week. Okay? All right, guys, I'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much. Bye.